Hello and welcome to Politics here on France 24. 2 months to go before round one of the presidential elections here in France. As things stand, the verdict is crystal clear. The next president will be a socialist by the name of FrancoisHollande. He's riding high in the polls, way in front of the current president, Nicolas Sarkozy. But Sarko, as he's known in France, certainly relishes the challenge. Can he pull it off? To answer this question, two guests, Christian Macarian, who is the managing editor of the weekly L'Express, and Mark Dean, who is with Bloomberg News. So the Cassandras were right. They warned that the presidential campaign would be brutal, and brutal it is indeed. As usual, each camp is accusing each other of starting the fire. But one thing is already clear: the last candidate to officially throw his hat into the ring, the incumbent, Nicolas Sarkozy, is not holding back his punches.
Just days into his candidacy and lagging in the polls, President Nicolas Sarkozy focused his attacks on frontrunner François Hollande.
This campaign should be a campaign of truth. French people deserve the truth. Where is the truth when you say one thing and then the opposite the following day? Where's the truth when you pretend to be Thatcher in London and then Mitterrand in Paris?
But the socialist candidate himself has tried to stay above the fray.
Violence and insults are a sign of weakness. When you're the incumbent president, you should be proud of what you've done. You should ignore your competitors. You should have policies, lay out new proposals. And here you have a sort of obsession with my own candidacy.
The far-right Marine Le Pen launched a more direct attack before the president had even finished speaking.
People of France, on April 22nd, give Nicolas Sarkozy a red card.
Others have accused the president of pandering to the right and losing sight of what's in the best interest of France. With low approval ratings and just 2 months until the first round of voting, President and candidate Sarkozy is facing an uphill battle to silence his opponents and reconnect with French voters.
Christian Macarian, mission impossible for Nicolas Sarkozy?
We'll see. We'll see if it is impossible or not. I'm not sure it's so impossible because, there is a risk for François Hollande to be elected so early in the campaign, elected before the campaign started. The campaign started, I think, really last week. And we have to see what is going to happen in the coming weeks. So I think a lot of journalists and commentators go too fast in their comments. I don't know personally who is going to win, but I think that it's more complicated. As far as I can see, I can evaluate the situation. I see that François Hollande has for him the fact that he's a new man, undoubtedly, that he's a very honest, very kind man, a very interesting man, competent. The question is that he has behind him all the Socialist Party. The people,
And that's a problem.
The people who supported Strauss-Kahn, for instance, and many others, and the extreme left, and a very weak program. For Sarkozy, it's clear that people are really fed up with Sarkozy, but what is the real percentage of these people that are fed up with Sarkozy? 20%, 50%, or 80%? We don't have any idea. The elections are made for that, so we have to wait for the minimum for the first round. And what we see in the polls is that the situation, I'm talking about the first round, is a little bit more complicated than all what we have heard.
Thank you for the transition. There are a few polls that were taken since Nicolas Sarkozy launched his campaign. So we'll see. Two are illustrated here. The first one by Ipsos shows in the first round François Hollande with 32%, Nicolas Sarkozy 25%. Yeah. Marine Le Pen 16, François Barrous, centrist candidate 11. Another taken by CSA shows a narrower gap, 28% for François Hollande, 27% for Nicolas Sarkozy, so neck and neck. In the second round, both polls show a clear advantage for François Hollande, one with an 18-point margin, the other one with a 12-point margin. So obviously, Mark Dean, those are polls, they change, but Nicolas Sarkozy needs a boost and quickly.
Well, I mean, I think it's good for Sarkozy that he's got a bit of a momentum. It does show the impact of his entering into the campaign and the gloves coming off and the fight being out in the open. However, I think the difference you were just showing there between the first and the second round shows the real size of the challenge. Christian is right, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. But at the same time, I think while it's sort of conceivable to close a 4 to 6 point gap, which we were looking at 2 weeks ago in the first round, closing what has been at some points a 20-point gap for the second round is going to be a lot harder. Supposing that we do get to a second round where it's Hollande, Sarkozy, can Sarkozy really count on all of Marine Le Pen's voters? Probably not. Probably some are going to stay home. And, the centrist vote, Bayrou, I think that Sarkozy has basically abandoned them. And I see a very hard time of him getting a majority of that vote. So I do think he's got his work really cut out for him.
When Mark Dean says it seems that Nicolas Sarkozy has abandoned the centrist voters, do you agree? Because
Yes.
that's the assumption that his first week or so the decision has been to go towards the right and the far right. In his discourse, he talks a lot about the values, about his opposition to homosexual marriage, and so on and so forth.
Well, is he right or wrong? It is true to say, I agree with Mark, that he has abandoned the centrist electorate.
But why?
Because his theory is that, he was member of the same government with François Bayrou in 1994. He thinks that François Bayrou, he knows him very well. He thinks that François Bayrou will have eventually no choice than joining Sarkozy's forces. Well, I don't know if it is true, but it is what Sarkozy thinks, that in a way Sarkozy is trapped, is in own strategy. So he thinks, Sarkozy, once again, he thinks that the important goal is, the target is the extreme right. So he focuses completely on the extreme right. And we must say that at least for 2 weeks, he has succeeded in not conquering this part of the electorate, but in seducing them. And I think up to there, his strategy is not really bad as far as I can judge of it. The question of the second round is another question. And I think that all these polls are very difficult to interpret, because how can you trust so many polls with so different questions, mixing wishes and...
but those are voting intentions we're talking about.
There are a lot of polls, for instance, in which the main question is, who do you think is going to win? Of course, we all think it's going to be Hollande. Is that a real poll? No. The question is, who are you going to vote for? And we still see that there are more than 40% of the voters who consider that they have not made a choice. So there is, let's say, a possibility again for Nicolas Sarkozy. I don't say he's going to win, but I refuse to say he has lost.
What about François Hollande? He's been kind of sitting back, saying, Sarkozy is attacking, he's violent, I'm above the fray. Is this a good tactic, essentially playing defense?
Well, you said it. I think that Hollande's strategy is a defensive one, and I think actually it's a good strategy. It's a good strategy in this campaign because what Sarkozy needs is an opening, and if he were facing Strauss-Kahn or Ségolène Royal, candidates who would take risks out of their own nature, they might make a mistake, which would give Sarkozy the opening that he needs to sort of jump on that and win. As it is, Hollande is playing very defensive, not saying much. He's got the lead, presuming it's his to lose. And that's very hard for Sarkozy to fight on. Sarkozy jumps on every little scrap of a sort of mistake, if you can put it that way, that Hollande makes. But, it's hard for him to step into a breach because there is none.
Right. And what's striking is Sarkozy presenting himself as the candidate of the people. He has been depicted as the president of the rich, and now suddenly he says, I'm going to the people. He mentioned the idea of, using referendums because there's some the political class is not up to the task. And so, what do you make of this discourse? Is it credible, and is it a good one?
I don't think it's very credible, but it is clear that in a way it's a populist confession. Sarkozy has chosen to make things or to say things that could please the people. And about the halal meat, for instance, he has found, from my point of view, a very good level of speech, not going with Marine Le Pen, not saying the opposite too, something in the middle.
Right. Just for our viewers, there was a controversy with the far-right leader Marine Le Pen said that all the meat sold in the Paris region was halal. And
thank you for this summary. You're right. But it was just an example. I think that above all, Sarkozy wants to show about the question of the president of the people. He wants to show that he is a man who is responsible. He is a chief of state opposed to a political leader. He wants to make Hollande banal and himself exceptional. That's something he's playing with. I think this strategy is dangerous for Hollande because Hollande has to show the people that he's able to be a chief of state. He is able to be a prime minister. There is no doubt about that. He is able to be more honest than Sarkozy. No doubt about that. He is very able to be, in many fields, more competent than Sarkozy. But it is not the definition of the function. The definition of the function is to be visionary, to have a vision, a vista, as we say in French or in Spanish. And this is something in which he wants to show that he is unique. I'm just trying to describe his strategy once again. I don't know if it's going to work, but I think that there is a weakness in Hollande's personality, in Hollande's experience, in Hollande's character. There is a kind of weakness because you have to make a kind of fiction and imagine Hollande in the Libyan case or facing the Syrian case or going to the UN in New York or, for instance, going to Brussels. He said that he will rediscuss the European Treaty on the financial mechanism, and it was adopted by the Parliament yesterday. So he has absolutely no possibility to rediscuss this. So
go ahead.
They are fighting on different fields. So Hollande has shown that he was better on social internal questions. Sarkozy has shown that he was better on international, let's say, strategic questions. So the balance will be decided by the people, by the French people.
When you want to say, Gaddafi, Assad, or Angela Merkel, that's a joke, obviously. But it's one thing going to Brussels, but going to Berlin, and that's been very large part of the 5 years Sarkozy has spent in office is sort of butting heads with Angela Merkel, and I think there is a real doubt of whether François Hollande is up to it.
That doesn't win votes. According to most polls, foreign policy is really an afterthought.
This time is different, Mark, I think.
That's Sarkozy's argument, but is it? Aren't people thinking about jobs, education, housing more than any?
The pressure of the international context is something unseen in a national French election.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of what Christian was
Yeah.
saying a minute ago. It's this implication for Sarkozy that he has been able to make decisions, that he's been in the chair making tough decisions for 5 years, and by the corollary of that is that François Hollande has never done anything like it, and that is really his only card to play. I mean, and not to sort of banalize it completely, but in any election, in any democracy, there are only two arguments: either it's time for a change, or we need an experienced set of hands, and that's the one that he's got to argue. He has a hard time arguing it because of his own sort of weaknesses and inconsistencies and playing politics with a certain number of issues. But it is the underlying theme of his campaign, and it is, more importantly, what he really believes.
Right. Do you agree that it is now clearly a face-to-face? At some point, there was some speculation that Marine Le Pen might be in the second round, or even François Bayrou, but now it's a done deal. It's Sarkozy versus Hollande.
On this field, they have both won. Yes, it's a face-to-face, point one. And point two, it's going to be violent. This is for sure. Because the difference between the platforms is very, very thin. Very, very thin. For Hollande has no interest to talk more about his program, because his program looks like Sarkozy's one. And the more he says, the more he's going to lie. He knows that. Sarkozy has no interest to talk about his program too, because he has no new idea. So they are going to fight personality against personality, style against style, character against character, nature against nature. And it's going to be maybe not very glorious, but it is the meaning of our institution. We choose a man in the presidential election. We don't choose a policy. There are general elections for that 3 weeks after. We have to choose a man, and that's, from my point of view, Sarkozy's policy. If the question is to choose a man, choose me.
You agree?
Yes, yeah. Overall, I mean, there's not much policy difference. And for that reason, it's going to be all that more vicious.
Okay, well, we can agree on this. It's going to be vicious, violent, you name it. Thank you very much to both of you. We'll follow the campaign here, of course, on politics. See you next week.